From the Folger Shakespeare Library, this is Shakespeare Unlimited. I'm Farah Kareem Cooper, the Folger Director. The Oregon Shakespeare Festival is one of America's largest and longest-running theater festivals. Each year, OSF puts on contemporary and classic plays alongside innovative Shakespeare productions on its 3 stages. Held in Ashland, Oregon, OSF is now in its 90th season. A new production of Julius Caesar opened the festival this year. It foregrounds the play's theme of a republic sliding into autocracy. But it does so with a twist. The entire cast is made up of female or non-binary actors.
What does a common prove? That lowliness is young ambition's ladder, whereto the climber upward turns his face, but when he once attains the upmost round, he then unto the ladder turns his back, looks in the clouds, scorning the base degrees by which he did ascend. So Caesar may, then lest he may, prevent.
The director is Rosa Joshi, whose theater collective Upstart co-produced the play with OSF. Joshi is also the associate artistic director of the Oregon Shakespeare Festival and is a former member of the Folger Board of Governors. Here's Rosa Joshi in conversation with Barbara Bogave.
I do want to start at the beginning by talking about your choreography for the beginning of this production, and I guess throughout, but especially the beginning. You really grip us right from the moment go. And the cast fills the stage, they're bathed in red light, and everyone kind of shakes and shudders in unison. And I was watching this, and it just felt, it had the impression as if the world is coming apart at the seams. It's just electrifying. So what was your concept for the opening, and what kind of conversations did you have with your choreographer about how to realize this vision?
I've been lucky enough with my work with Upstart Crow especially, and other Shakespeares I've worked on, to be able to workshop ahead of a production. And so I work with a choreographer, Alice Gosti, and Alice comes from the dance world. Her title with me when we work together is movement director, because I think that's really how she thinks about narrative and theme and dramatic structure. And when we workshop, we often start with what are some ideas in the play that we're interested in exploring. So one of the things I was interested with in this production was the idea of the world breaking apart.
Well, you nailed it. I mean,
well, so, and it really, so the ideas I say often always come from the text. And I was struck as I was analyzing the play that before the eve of the assassination, the natural world is going haywire, right? There are lions roaming the street. There's this incredible thunderstorm.
When are you moved? When all the sway of earth shakes like a thing unfirm? Oh, Cicero, I have seen tempests when the scalding winds have rived the knotty oaks, and I have seen the ambitious ocean rage and swell and foam, but never till tonight, never till now did I go through a tempest dropping fire.
And as so often happens in Shakespeare, when humans are screwing up, the natural world reacts. You see it in Macbeth, you see it in Midsummer Night's Dream, and you see it here on the eve of the assassination.
Nature is a mirror.
Yes, right. And it feels very Greek to me in that way also, in the way that the natural world and the human world are intertwined. So I approached Alice with this idea, and I knew that I saw after the assassination, when we come back in the second half, that the world has broken apart. And I knew I was building a world of concrete, and I was like, the concrete is going to crack and crumble. And then it was Alice who said, I see shaking. That was just an image that came to her. And I have learned in my time working with Alice to be like, okay, shaking, let's explore that. So we just in workshop explored the idea of the human body shaking. And then I said, oh, maybe this is the way we begin the show. So then we just put everybody in the space and had them shake. And we'd also been exploring different ideas of banners and flags. I was looking at authoritarian imagery.
Mm.
And so we came across banners, like a lot of our visual research with the scenic design had been banners. So that motion that you see of waving the banners in the beginning also came out of workshops. So we put those two ideas together, along with, I also wanted some kind of Hail Caesar salute that we came up with. So there wasn't sort of one genesis. It was a whole bunch of different ideas. What I came to realize is that there's some kind of unrest inside the people. There's something about this world, the world falling apart, that we are creating, that's coming from us. It's not just from one single person. It's coming from inside the populace.
Oh, now that's interesting. Most directors come on the podcast and they tell me that they start they have an overarching concept or just a strong emotional force compelling them towards an idea. So is that yours? Is that the case for you? And is that where your inspiration came from? Or did you have some kind of intellectual overarching concept as well?
We had this play designed last August because we have to prepare because of working in rotating rep. The design process begins really early here compared to other regional and national theaters. So I had this approach for this play before the election, but I looked at this play and I knew that I wanted to talk about authoritarianism. So I knew that was the approach. And I remember thinking, well, it'll still be relevant regardless of who wins the election.
Yeah, and despite what happened here in America, globally, it's so relevant. Anyway.
Right. So I was looking at dictatorships globally.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I wasn't just thinking about the United States. So a lot of the research that I was looking at with the creative team was Latin American, was in Asia, was in Africa, and Europe. So yes, so I was looking at global ideas of authoritarianism. So that is what I was looking at. But also my way in, I think, was the character of Brutus. Because I was thinking like what we as citizens would do to save our republic.
What we're prepared to do. Or maybe unprepared to do. Yeah, because Brutus is struggling with that.
Exactly. So what would we do if we felt that we were faced with an autocracy? Because we all believe that we love our country. We all believe that we are patriotic. We all believe that we are good people, right? And so what would we do? And what happens when we are convinced that violence is the only answer?
Well, it's really provocative, and I want to take those two ideas then in order and go back to your idea about authoritarianism. And I guess my question is, how do you think about modern-day references in a play when you're tackling that theme, but working with Shakespeare? And as an example, you do have modern-day references in your play. At one point, there's a poster of Caesar in the style of Shepard Fairey's famous Barack Obama Hope poster for the 2008 campaign. And you were mentioning the banners. You use SPQR, of course, the famous reference to the Republic as opposed to an autocracy on your banners. So how did you think about telegraphing modern politics in this production? Because it can get heavy-handed very quickly.
Yeah, I think I often create worlds that reference different periods without being set in any specific period. Although this is, of the work I've done, I think you could look at it and say we are referencing, 20th century authoritarian regimes. So there's brutalist architecture that is also referencing Roman architecture in terms of columns and arches. And then I was looking at 20th century authoritarian iconography in terms of those banners, but then also thinking of Rome, right? And sort of thinking of both those things together. I'm thinking of the time it was written in, the time it was written about, the time that we're in now, and the time roughly that I'm setting it in, and how all of those things are playing together in a way that hopefully isn't reducing it to one idea, but letting all of those ideas live in hopefully a sort of complex way that is both intellectual and sort of hits you emotionally.
Yeah, so very mindful of the layers, always layering.
Yeah, I think I'm always thinking about that so that it can't be too much of one thing where it starts to become that one thing.
Well, I can see how you're making also really interesting choices with your staging, going on this idea of layering your ideas about authoritarianism in your research. One in particular that I'm thinking of is that you bring Julius Caesar, played by Kate Wisniewski, you bring him back after the assassination. So Caesar is still in blood-soaked clothes, and Caesar haunts the second act, as if to say that you can kill a tyrant, but you're not killing the love the tyrant inspired or the ideas the tyrant embodies.
I think that's exactly right. That I was like, okay, we might all fantasize that we can just get rid of this person.
Right.
You might feel that, but you can, and that's what you said is exactly what I talked about, which is you can kill the tyrant, but you don't kill the ideas necessarily by killing the person. So in the play, the ghost of Caesar comes back to speak to Brutus. So that is actually in the play. I think we just made him more present so that you could see the idea that he rises from the dead. You actually see him rise, and then he sets a riot in motion. So
yeah, he has a bit more agency.
Yeah. And then you see him in this production at key moments affecting the story. So he's given more agency after his death here. Well, and is it him or is it their guilt? Is it,
right.
Is it actually him? It's a ghost. Is it in their minds? I think that's still at play.
Right, exactly, like a thorn.
And their own guilt. Brutus was like a son to Caesar. He was, his favorite. So
yeah, let's talk about Brutus, because I've always thought of Brutus as the surrogate for the audience in this play, that Brutus embodies our apprehensions and our divisions and helps us think through some of these ideas about applying logic and arguing with our conscience and questioning whether the ends justify the means. A restored democratic republic justifies assassination and betrayal and violence. And Brutus gets to that and more. But what was your guidepost for your Brutus? What did you most want from your actor Kate Hurster's performance?
I think it came down to the stoicism of this character, right? Like how much they held within themselves and were trying to live their life through that philosophy. And also that it was all down that they knew that they had this position of leadership, that people would follow them. And so that what they chose to do would have this impact, right? So and that they had to be as sure as he could be, but he could only be so sure. Now, one of the things I did talk to the cast about, because of the times we're in the play itself, there is a question about whether Caesar will actually be a tyrant, right? If you're analyzing,
we don't necessarily know if Caesar's a tyrant. It's all in potential.
It's all in potential, right? But in this production, we're clearly on our way, right? Like, I have so much authoritarian iconography. I don't think you can look at it and say, I don't think he's going to be like that. He behaves in ways clearly that it's very clear that. And that to me was the question for now. Because, Brutus says that in his soliloquy, before the conspirators come to visit him, he says words to the effect of, I have not known him to act in this way, right? Like, to tell truth, I've never seen him actually do this.
It must be by his death. And for my part, I know no personal cause to spurn at him, but for the general, he would be crowned. How that might change his nature, there's the question. It is a bright day that brings forth the adder, and that craves wary walking. Crown him that, and then I grant we put a sting in him that at his will he may do danger with. The abuse of greatness is when it disjoins remorse from power, and to speak truth of Caesar, I have not known when his affections swayed more than his reason.
But he might become that, and once he becomes that, then it's too late. So we have to do it now, right? We have to do it before he becomes that. So I think that he is trying to do what is right for his country. He's trying to save his country. And he feels the responsibility of that. And he feels the burden of that. And I think that's what Kate captures to me.
I think she does. I think I've seen Brutuses that are more self-righteous than her. And I feel that this performance was more tortured than other Brutuses I've seen, which was interesting because I think the text gives Brutus a lot of room to live in denial of what he's doing.
Yes.
And I don't feel that. I feel that her Brutus is truly, truly more emotional than that kind of stiff Brutus many actors go for. So I gather that's a direction that she took. That didn't come from you.
Yeah, and I think that the stoicism is because there's so much brewing underneath Brutus that has to be kept in check, as opposed to I'm in control the whole time. And I there's a rawness to Kate's performance for me that brings me along with her.
Yeah, and I think she really nailed one of my favorite lines of all time. The abuse of greatness is when it disjoins remorse from power.
Yeah.
Because no one's left off the hook. I mean,
yes.
Brutus has greatness. Brutus abuses greatness. Caesar has greatness. Everyone. Applies to everyone. You have the political becoming personal in such a Shakespearean way because the play gets to the politics, but it also gets to these very deep things that happen between people, particularly in the scenes between Brutus and Cassius, who's played by Caro Zeller in your production, where they bicker and they wrangle and they quarrel bitterly in the second half of the play after Caesar's assassination.
I had rather be a dog and be the moon than such a Roman.
Brutus bait not me. I'll not endure it. You forget yourself to hedge me in. I am a soldier, older in practice, abler than yourself to make conditions.
Don't you? You are not Cassius.
I am.
I say you are not.
Urge me no more, I shall forget myself. Have mind upon your health. Tempt me no farther.
Away, slight man! It's possible. Hear me, for I will speak.
And it's actually very confusing to anyone who doesn't know the play that well because they're arguing Brutus is mad that Cassius has taken a bribe or maybe taken a bribe. It's not really clear. Yeah. But really you come to realize that it doesn't matter what they're arguing about. Really, they're arguing about power and distrust and disappointment in this relationship. And they're kind of using this other thing as a proxy argument, which is so human.
And also, as soon as they do this monumental thing, everything falls apart, right? As soon as this happens, then Because they haven't made a plan for afterwards, right? That was also the thing. It was like did they talk about what they would do afterwards? No. They're making it up.
As they go
They're
along.
improvising.
Yes.
Right? And so that's also part of it. And also one thing that revealed itself to me also was that Brutus is coming into that scene with the knowledge of Portia's death.
Brutus is a mess. Yeah.
Brutus is a mess. And so, like, there's part of what's happening to me also is I thought a lot about displaced anger. And, like, he's the Stoic, right? So he can't express his anger about or his feelings about Portia. So he's letting it all out on Cassius.
That's right. That's right.
Because he has to have somewhere to put that emotion.
That's right, to displace it.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about Caesar as male and your actor as female. And so I want to get to this, to the female and the non-binary casting element of this. I wonder what the female and non-binary casting add.
Yeah, I leave that sort of to an audience.
Well, I'll tell you. I'm asking this for a specific reason because I talked to the actor Harriet Walter about her portrayal of Brutus in Felita Lloyd's all-female production,
Which I think is brilliant.
Oh,
I love that
wonderful,
production.
and it was set in a prison, so that added a whole other thing. But she said that she felt that two women arguing raises the stakes even more, because women are conditioned not to be so aggressive or confrontational.
Yes.
So it hits harder, she thought. That was one of her insights into the casting choices. What do you think about that?
I agree that the stakes feel higher. But I also think that the friendship feels strong to me. And for me watching it or thinking about it, the betrayal of the friendship really hits home for me in Caro and Kate's performance. I think if you talk to them, they would also talk about the fact that as women, they experience some of these same things. The sense of bullying, the sense of ostracization, the sense of aggression. You know, women, we tend to think that they're not aggressive.
But of course, we are.
Right.
We're just conditioned not to be.
And so when we, often when we do this work, we don't talk about acting male. We just talk about the character, if that makes sense.
What does being in a room full of women and non-binary actors, when you're in the rehearsal process or the research process or into the play, how is that different for you? And how does a all-female and non-binary cast affect you as the director, if at all?
This is, I think, my 6th or 7th time doing this work with Upstart Crow, and so it has become very normalized for me. But one thing I realized when I first started doing this work is that, when I started, I love doing Shakespeare. So you're in a room of mostly men, right?
Right.
Often, especially if you're doing the history plays, which I loved also. And I had said, this is my life. This is my work life. I'm in a room of men. I want to work on Shakespeare. This is what it is. And it took me working on Upstart Crow to realize that both as a director and as a producer, I can actually change the space. I can change my workspace. Just because I'm working on Shakespeare doesn't mean it has to be a space filled with men, whom I love working with also. But like being in a room of women, I found myself able to not have to think about threats to my authority in the space and how I was going to have to prove that I knew what I was doing. And that helped me to problem solve in a collaborative way and to hear like a space where your voice could be heard without fighting for it in the same way that I had experienced before or that other women had experienced before. I mean, I think when I first started doing this work, I was just trying to make work for me and for the people that I wanted to work with. And I wasn't actually thinking about how the room would be different or what I was doing politically, if that makes sense.
Sure. No, that's very real. It's so liberating, it sounds like, for you, but also for the actors who never had a place in these history plays, or they were...
We were doing the work, and it was through doing the work that I started to say, oh, this is what it means when women take on these roles. I was working on Henry IV, actually at the Folger, and a great DC actor, Naomi Jacobson. It wasn't an Upstart Crow production, but I often, in Shakespeare's, I often try to cast women in roles of power. So some of the male politicians that have a lot of power, and she was playing Worcester, and we were doing table work, and we were talking about strategy and war. And she said, I never get to be part of this conversation. I'm always the whore in Eastcheap. And that has always stayed with me. I get to tell the whole story, right, as the director. But what part of the story do female and non-binary actors get to tell in Shakespeare? And how can we say Shakespeare is universal, right? We say that these stories are for everyone. And what do we really mean when we say that, right? Do we mean that everyone needs to filter their sense of universal through a specific point of view and make that universal for themselves? Or can we actually bring different voices, different bodies, different points of view into the story? What does it mean for those bodies on stage to be telling this story? It's not realism, right? I know that. But these human beings who are artists today, who have so much skill and experience. I was also really influenced by Harriet Walter and her book, Brutus and Other Heroines, which I read after I'd started doing this work. And I'm paraphrasing, but something she said in that book about the fact that she felt that her Shakespeare days were over because she'd played all the roles.
Yes, that's
right. And
right.
she said she felt like she was a concert pianist who was told that there were no pianos left. She couldn't play the piano anymore. And
after she played Cleopatra, I think.
Yes.
There was nothing left in Shakespeare.
There's nothing left. So to me, I was like, oh, there are these women who are at the top of their game and they can't play, right? Because there are no roles. So what happens when they get to tell these stories? I also think that you start to look at male behavior differently when women inhabit those roles.
So you can see more what a performance it is.
Or you can see the behavior differently, right? There's something, I think it's true if it's all male Shakespeare also, you might look at gender differently. You experience it more critically also, right? Like, why do men behave that way? What is it to walk into a room and assume that everybody is going to listen to you, that your opinion matters?
To inhabit the space, dominate the space. Does your cast think of themselves as playing across gender, as women or non-binary actors playing men, or are they playing these people as people?
They're playing character, right? So they're playing... We talk about, like, what is the truth of this character? I am interested, again, in the fact that it's a woman playing a man, but you'll forget and you'll just start watching that character. But then all of a sudden you'll be reminded that there are women on stage. I did an adaptation of the Henry VI plays where there was a court scene where Margaret speaks up. And she's the only female character in this room of men, and one of the lords says something along the line like, these are no women's matters, puts her down, puts her in her place. And when that was performed, the whole audience laughs because, of course, they're aware
right,
that the stage is filled with women and non-binary people. And so and then you're like, well, why are these no women's matters? Right? And then you think about how many women are in the room when these decisions are being made today.
More layers upon layers.
Right.
And since you started Upstart Crow, you've staged history plays, King John, Titus Andronicus, Richard III, Coriolanus, and now Julius Caesar. I read somewhere, I called them history plays, but I read somewhere that you don't like to call them that. You call them Shakespeare's political war plays.
Yeah, actually, Kate Wisniewski taught me to say that. I'm always thinking, why are we doing these plays today for us, as a contemporary American audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why do we care about medieval English history, right? Why should, it's not our history directly, right? So why does it matter? And so what has been preoccupying me in these plays is the nature of leadership and moral leadership, and the idea of what can we forgive and what must we not forget, right, in terms of who our leaders are and who we choose for our leaders. And as we were talking about this, Kate said, when these plays were grouped together in the folio or grouped together and they were called the history plays, perhaps that was a disservice because they're epic plays about politics and war. Like, if you think about that, then you're talking about something beyond like a history lesson. Like, if I say history play to you, you go,
right.
Oh, I'm going to fall asleep and be taught something, right?
But political war plays are universal.
Political war plays, and then suddenly they're thrillers.
Yeah.
They're action plays, right? And they are, to me, what you were saying earlier is like the personal and the political run all through them, through every single play. And it is, personal relationships between leaders that lead us to war, right? How the people in power are motivated by personal vendettas, by vengeance, by desire for power, and they say they're doing it for the people. Mm. I mean, that's today, isn't it? Like, that's why these plays matter and why they still resonate for us, because we can feel that in the world today.
Absolutely. But do you want to do some comedies or problem plays?
Oh, my goodness, wouldn't I?
Oh, really?
I mean, I have, right? I have definitely. It's funny because the first Shakespeares I did early on were like Twelfth Night and Much Ado and Midsummer Night's Dream. And I have done those. And I did As You Like It here in 2019 also. So, yes. And I'm doing Henry IV Part 1 again next year on the Elizabethan stage. And it might be an oxymoron to say it's the funniest history play, but it is. It is a comedy.
And you're going to play that up.
Yeah.
Well, we should remind people that you're also the Associate Artistic Director for the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. And the organization has gone through some turmoil in recent years with director Nataki Garrett's resignation after she received death threats and other harassment allegedly over her attempts to diversify the repertoire. How has this, turmoil affected the festival, and where do you find yourselves now?
I think we find ourselves now in a place where we are not going to back down from diversifying the world of Shakespeare, right? And creating work that speaks to who we are as a contemporary American society now, right? Which means that who are the voices that we celebrate, both in terms of who's on stage and the words on stage, also like in terms of writers. So, I mean, my hope is to create a world of Shakespeare that is welcoming to people of all different backgrounds. I think if we're speaking about the future of Shakespeare, I think a lot about the next generation. And I think that, to me, being able to see that the stories can be about you is really important. And a large part of that also is that, I can actually understand these stories. These are not stories that are spoken in a kind of language that is rarefied and that is not really meant to be understood. To me, clarity of text is the most important thing in terms of welcoming people into the space. And then who is, as I said, who is telling the stories on stage in terms of identities, not to check off a box, but to be like, this is really who we are as a nation, right? So the people telling the stories reflect the people in our country. And then also, we have a play by Karen Zacharias on stage. We have Octavia Solis. We have August Wilson. So to me, one of the great things about the rotating repertory model that we're in also is that these authors share the space with Shakespeare, the literal physical space, in that you can see Julius Caesar in the afternoon, and then you can see Karen Zacharias' work in the evening, and it is literally in the same space.
Right, woven within.
With the same resources.
Yeah, which is a really powerful message. But with this current administration, there's a really powerful anti-woke movement going on that's affecting all of the arts, the academy, theaters, workplaces. How do you feel the chill?
I do. I mean, as an artist, I feel the chill for sure, right? But then it makes me realize that the kind of work that we do is really significant and important. And I see audiences coming to it, right? Kyoto Nuevo, a retelling of Don Quixote, is reaching people of all backgrounds, because it's saying that this story that is centered around this community actually can speak universally. I don't say that's woke. Well, how is that woke? Well, and that's like, or just trying to be that for the sake of it. It's universal. It's really important for us to see that there is something in our collective humanity that we share, right? And that telling stories from different perspectives isn't meant to exclude anyone. It might speak to certain audiences and certain people that have not been spoken to before. And isn't that what we're trying? Like, that is actually inclusive. When young women and non-binary people tell me that they finally see themselves in Shakespeare in a way that they haven't before, isn't that what we want? Isn't that making the work more universal and more inclusive? I mean, I don't think we do this work to try and make people feel bad about who they are. I mean, that's just my belief. I think we make this work to invite more voices into the conversation. It's just this idea that there isn't space, that we have to protect the space somehow. But there is space, I believe. And when we invite these voices in, then the conversation is richer, and we all discover more about what it means to be human in the world. I go to the theater, yes, to experience something that is like me, but also to experience something that is not like me at all, that opens up my idea of what humanity is and can be, right? To learn about someone else's particular experience deepens my humanity.
Thank you so much for this passionate defense of theater. And Rosa Joshi, thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you. This was really fun. Thank you so much.
That was Rosa Joshi, interviewed by Barbara Bogave. Julius Caesar runs until October 26th at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, alongside As You Like It, The Merry Wives of Windsor, The Importance of Being Earnest, Into the Woods, Quixote Nuevo, and Shane. Check out their complete schedule at osfashland.org. This episode was produced by Matt Frasica. Garland Scott is the executive producer. It was edited by Gail Kern-Pastor. We had technical help from Voice Tracks West in Studio City, California. Our web producer is Paula Garcia Acuna. Leonor Fernandez edits our transcripts. Final mixing services provided by Clean Cuts at 3Cs Inc. If you're a fan of Shakespeare Unlimited, please spread the word. Tell a friend about why you love the podcast. Shakespeare Unlimited comes to you from the Folger Shakespeare Library. Home to the world's largest Shakespeare collection, the Folger is dedicated to advancing knowledge and the arts. If you're in Washington, D.C., come visit the Folger on Capitol Hill. Come face to face with a Shakespeare First Folio in our exhibition halls, or take in a play in our theater, or enjoy our Quill and Crumb Cafe. We'd love to see you. For more information, visit our website, folger.edu. Until next time, thanks for listening.